Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Nice
as simple
ride.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Well, hello there, listeners. Welcome to this week's episode of the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, wellness coach, and well-being expert, Darlene Marshall. And you probably already know this, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And mental health, in the way that I not just think about it, but experience it personally, it isn't just the absence of our problems. Right? You probably heard me say, if you're a regular fan of the show, that the absence of the bad stuff isn't the same as the presence of the good stuff. And so often when we think about mental health, we're thinking about, I like to talk to my clients about it like it's a bucket. And if I've got a bucket full of like slimy, gooey, gross stuff, right? Like I compost for my garden. So sometimes the bucket that the compost is in is just kind of rank. Well, a lot of times we think about mental health like that bucket, and we focus on getting all of the gross stuff out of the bucket. And we've got all kinds of coping strategies and meaning making and therapeutic modalities that we use to get the gross stuff out. But if I dump out the bucket and I hose it down, well, now I got an empty bucket. And if you think about your life like that bucket, a lot of times when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about how do we get the gross stuff out of our minds? How do we deal with our symptoms? How do we cope with our stress? But a lot of people miss, well, what do I want to put the good stuff in the bucket? What if I want to drill some holes in the bottom, fill it up with soil, and then grow flowers or tomatoes in my bucket? I tend to grow more food than flowers, if I'm being fully honest. So in this metaphor, this May Mental Health Awareness Month, I want to invite you into some conversations about how we have the presence of the good stuff as opposed to only focusing on mitigating the bad stuff. Not that the mitigation stuff isn't important. It is. Don't get me wrong. Again, if you're a fan of the show, if you follow my content, you know I've been in therapy for a long time. I'm a big proponent of mental health therapy, of clinical practice, and as a positive psychology practitioner, my expertise is how do we get the good stuff in your bucket? So the absence of the bad isn't the same as the presence of the good. And the more and more that I do this well-being work, the more I encounter this essential essence, this foundation of the well-being work that I want to share with you today. And that is giving yourself permission to feel satisfied. And that means with yourself, with the moment you're in, with the life that you've built, with your efforts, finding satisfaction in what you've been building in your life. Now, it's felt to me like we've been taught from a very young age in our culture that we are supposed to be looking to the next thing. We're going to want more and more, right? I've been in the personal development space for 13 years, but I grew up in a household where my mom always had self-help books around the house, to her credit, right? That is not a knock. I don't think I could do what I do now if I didn't grow up in an environment where my mom really wanted to enrich herself, to be better than where she started. But I think that there's a dark side to that, because now we're in this place, like culturally, collectively, that we have this idea where if we let ourselves feel satisfaction, if we feel satisfied, somehow we're going to like lose our edge. I think there's this movie from, I think the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s with Keanu Reeves. It's called Sweet November. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And he plays this really hard charging, like marketing guy who's out there winning. And he's in the Bay Area before it became this like tech hub, before it was Silicon Valley. And He keeps saying over and over, his mantra in the beginning of the movie is, worrying about losing keeps you winning. That is the epitome of this thing I'm trying to describe to you. That being so focused on I have to win to the point that you never allow yourself to feel the actual win itself, that you're so worried about losing that it keeps you winning to the point that you never actually feel the win. And I think that that is our relationship to satisfaction now as a culture, that it's a fear, a belief that satisfaction somehow makes us soft. It means we're not driven. And I got to tell you, from studying this stuff, from coaching this stuff, from experiencing it myself, that is 100% a fallacy. It is hurting us to have that mindset. So this week on the show, I want to kick off Mental Health Awareness Month by sharing with you about this essential foundation to well-being. I don't think well-being becomes accessible to us in a sustainable, meaningful way without the ability to feel satisfied. So it seems like, to me, this notion that you're not going to strive for things if you let yourself feel satisfied, in reality, when we deprive ourselves of the positive emotional payoff of our efforts, we feel drained. We feel like we're striving and striving, we're hustling, we're on this treadmill of accomplishment. But if you study fitness, if you've ever been in a fitness culture, if you've ever trained for a race or a lifting competition, you know that there's efforts, there's days that you train, there's days that you make the efforts, and then there's days that you recover, that you allow your body to heal and repair itself. That's no different for cognitive load or emotional labor, right? We push, we strive, and then we recover. When we are constantly pushing, our nervous system gets taxed, our nervous system gets strained. And we go through seasons in our lives, or I think that we should, where we make these intense efforts toward leveling up. I think of grad school. I think of starting my business. I think of times that we've really been trying to level up the show, where you buckle down and you grind for a while. But for all of us, we need that moment of relief and of rest and regeneration. And I think for it to be effective recovery in that moment of positive emotional payoff, we also need, right, we need to be able to feel the goodness of our efforts. Otherwise, what's the point? Right? We just end up feeling so drained, so overwhelmed. And don't take my word for it. We're going to get to that in just a second. You're listening to the Better Than Fine podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Marshall. And today I'm sharing with you, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, the self-permission to feel satisfied, to feel satisfaction, and why that's not a bad thing. If you've listened to the episode from March, optimize is a 4-letter word, some of this is going to sound familiar. Because when we try to be perfect, when we try to maximize, to optimize everything all the time, it's a bit of a pit. Because that perfectionism, that chasing, that optimizing, not only is it subjective, but every time you get to a place where it's like, if I just had blah, 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 then I would be happy. And then you get blah, 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 and then you adapt, you return to baseline, you go, yep, there we go. I won the thing. And this has happened to me recently. I had a couple of things happen in like very quick succession. Yeah, some bad things, but also some really good things, where there was one particular week where run right after the other, something positive happened for me. And I was really excited in the moment. And then by the end of the week, I was just like back to myself, right? Back to like my normal life, my normal ongoing problems, my normal ongoing successes. Because despite that spike moment, unless we have things structured in our lives to change our default settings, to change our cognitive behaviors, most of us just return to the baseline that we live at. Right? Like that's normal. And if part of that baseline is this mindset where you're always hustling and you never feel satisfied, you return to this space of more and more. It's never enough. And so then you get the blah, blah, blah. You return to your baseline. And what do? Oh, I need a new thing. I got to chase the next hustle. I got to chase the next accomplishment. I got to chase the next cute potential partner. I got to get the next promotion. And instead of giving ourselves that moment in the sun, we're just right back in the hustle. We are right back in the grind. And how many times are we going to do that before we start to develop this narrative of, well, when is it ever enough? When is it ever good enough? And when I work with clients, it's not uncommon for them to tell me some version of this story. And it comes out as they don't feel good enough. So I ask them, well, what would be good enough? What does good enough mean to you? And I wish you could hear their reactions or see their faces in that moment where they're bemoaning their emotional state. I don't feel good enough. I'm not good enough. And when postured with this question, what would be good enough? Blank. They've never thought about it. And if you listening to this right now, think about your own internal narrative around how hard you're working, how much you're pushing, what would be good enough for you to feel good about it? And most people I ask that to, they've never thought about it. They're just striving, right? That's just what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to push, you're supposed to hustle. And when you've never taken the time to consider what enough is, how could you ever be good enough? Because if you never considered it, it doesn't exist, right? So I've encountered lately a lot of people seem to be spiraling in this enoughness, like this mindset of I'm pushing, there's all this pressure, I'm anxious, I can't do enough, I'm not being enough, I'm not accomplishing enough, I'm not getting enough done. I just this cycle of this narrative of enough. And, humble brag here, not to brag, but I coach some pretty incredible individuals. Like my clients, first off, I'm just like one of those people who absolutely fangirls their own clients. Like I think my clients are incredible, period, end of story. And also like objectively, high achievers, very successful professionally. When I teach workshops, I'm teaching workshops to some of the biggest brands and most recognizable names of companies that like you would know. And it very consistently blows me away how even at that level, arguably very successful people by whatever metric our society judges success, right? They've got beautiful homes and lovely families and great job titles and all the stuff that any of us would want for like our loved ones or our children or ourselves. And they still feel like they're not enough. And then I ask them this question, what does enough mean to you? What is your personal good enough? And I encounter people who balk in that moment and struggle. And whenever I encounter that, there's this person that always comes to mind. Back in college, my junior year of college, I tutored this guy in theater history. I was a theater major undergrad. We had a theater history requirement. It was also a general education option. And this guy chose his arts gen ed as like a theater history course. Okay. I am such a nerd girl that I would not let this very charismatic Division I athlete cheat off of me. I'm sure no one is surprised. But I also couldn't imagine that he wouldn't want to get the best possible grade that he could possibly get. And so I was really pushing him to learn the material, and he kept getting frustrated and said, Darlene, D is for diploma. And I then, and still a little bit now, short-circuited because he knew exactly where his good enough line was. He didn't have to care more than whatever it was that was going to get him that gen ed requirement and get him the piece of paper with his name on it. And he did not care otherwise. That guy is now a very successful VP at a global shipping company. There you go. Because so many of us are out here putting energy into extra that we're burning ourselves out. We're pushing in ways that don't necessarily impact our outcomes. And good enough, having a threshold for good enough would I save us a ton of energy, a ton of time that we could then spend on the things we actually care about, right? When I talk to clients about this, it spirals them. They start immediately thinking about the biggest stuff, right? The good enough at like the top of the mountain, the pinnacle things. What would be good enough to get me the next promotion? What would be good enough to... And I want to invite you, if you are having that moment as we talk about good enough, not just good enough for what, but good enough to feel satisfied, to allow you to savor the positive experiences in your life and the payoff of all of your efforts. What would be good enough for that? And I want to invite you to reconsider not leaning into your impulse to immediately think about the biggest possible things in your life, because that's not going to be the most helpful strategy. Just like everything else, you don't go from never working out a day in your life to doing 90-minute two-a-days as if you were a professional athlete. It would break your body. I don't recommend it. You don't go from having never touch typed in your life to typing 100 words a minute on the first day. That's not how that works, right? You got to teach the motor program. Just like any other set of skills, learning a language, learning how to knit, this practice should start small. If you are someone who struggles with the perfectionism mindset, the optimizing everything, the push, the big stuff, you never feel good enough, you want to start small with your satisfaction practice. So I want you to try this today, right? Right now, as you hear this, and hopefully you'll repeat it as many times as you need to, let's start small with our satisfaction practice. I want you to think of 3 things that you are going to try and accomplish today. Not big stuff. It can be little stuff. 3 things that you want to accomplish today for yourself, your family, professionally, it doesn't matter what category. Whatever category you're struggling with the perfectionism thing, that's the 3 things. Write them down. And then I want you to consider what would be good enough for each of those 3 things for you to feel satisfied. Now, some people get stuck on that satisfied part. So just consider, why do you need to accomplish that? Why do you want to accomplish that? And whatever your why is, it's what would be good enough to satisfy the why. That might be digging into why you're doing something, right? If I'm going to go for my mental health run, I'm going to feel satisfied if I run for 20 minutes at a moderate intensity, because I've read the research and I know 20 minutes, moderate intensity cardio, that's what's going to be optimal for mental health. I don't need to tell myself to push the pace, right? I just got to do my 20. I don't need to tell myself I have to run for an hour. If I know what my good enough is, after 20 minutes, everything else I'm just doing purely for the enjoyment of it. And I try to savor it, or I go, it's 23 minutes. I did my 20 and we're done. And I can still let myself feel the satisfaction of like, I did the thing I was supposed to do. So you're going to identify 3 things you want to accomplish. What would be good enough for you to satisfy your why? Maybe you got to dig in on your why a little bit there. Then do them. And here's the tricky part. Here's the real stuck part. When you cross the line, do you actually allow yourself to say, yeah, I did the thing I said I was going to do? Because satisfaction, by its definition, is to just allow for the pleasant feeling of getting something that you wanted. So if you explicitly say, these are the 3 things, this is what it would be good enough, do them, and then allow yourself the emotional payoff of getting the thing that you said that you wanted. If you don't feel satisfied at that moment, it's time to ask yourself some new questions, right? Why are you not giving yourself permission? If you struggle with this, start really small. Small, doable goals and actions each day to practice the feeling of, oh, I did the thing I said I was going to do and I got what I wanted. When you do what you set out to do, that's it. Let it be simple, because here's the real kicker. It being simple is good enough if you give yourself permission to do it. That's it. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. And throughout the month of May, here and on my social media channels, I'm going to be sharing simple practices like this. So you're going to want to check those out. If you want to check those out, I'm on Instagram at darlene.coach. If you want to give me feedback to the show, you can email me. It is info@darlene.coach. I'm also on LinkedIn as Darlene Marshall. And I've got a Substack, which is also called Better Than Fine. Of course, I always love when you share any kind of feedback on the show. So if you want to shoot me that feedback, you can do it at the email info@darlene.coach. Of course, I hope that you've already liked, subscribed, shared the show. If you do, tag us. It's always fun to hear. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourselves this and every month, not just because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and be well.